السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the fiqh of the heart from the book of Mudarris Salikin Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. And after talking about some of the ahkam or some of the rulings of the tawbah, he talks about a very unique subject that not as far as I know, no one ever talked about it in such a way like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in which he talked about how people are with regards to the sins. Like certain things to be witnessed, the affairs of the people while committing the sins or when with regards to the sins. And we'll see that inshallah ta'ala when we talk about it. We talked about 13 types of situations. They call it mashhad. And mashhad is when you witness something, things to be witnessed. And he talks about this as being one of the most benefiting chapters of the book. And that's what he says, maybe you won't find it in any other book. The first one is, he called it Mashhad al-Hayawaniyya. First of all, I hope the voice is clear. Mashhad al-Hayawaniyya, which means the al-Hayawaniyya is with regards to being the animalistic mashhad, or to witness the animalistic state that a person is in when it comes to committing the sin. It's basically when a person would fulfill his desire. This is the situation of those who are ignorant, in which there's no differences between them and the rest of the animals when it comes to being upright, being able to speak. This is the only two things what makes them different than the animals. The fact that they are upright, they're able to walk on two legs, and they can speak. Other than that, the concerns are the same concerns of the animals, which is basically fulfilling one's desire with whatever path they can take, they would do so. Their nufus, or their nafs, their being is like the animals. It did not really get elevated to be in the human level, which is the human level. You know, if people purify themselves, they can reach to the level like the angels. Right? And how a human being can degrade himself to the slowest level. And that's a reminder of what's even mentioned in Surah Al-Teen. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human beings in the best stature ever, in the best way. ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين, then we brought him down to the worst of levels, except the believers, those who believe and do righteous good deeds. But then he talks about the different types of animals that people imitate their ways when it comes to sins. He said some of them, their nafs, or their soul, or their being is like the dogs. The dog, if it finds jifa is a corpse of an animal that would make him satisfied if he eats it, he would eat it. And he would protect it from the rest of the dogs. And he would bark against any dog that wants to, eat from it, or come close to it. Right? And he would not allow any other dogs to do anything or to fulfill their desires from it. And it doesn't matter whether this is something pure or not pure, or things of that nature. And this is how they are with regards to, some people are like that when it comes to the sins. Some of them is like his nafs is like a donkey one. It is not created except to work and work hard. And work hard and eat. Eat a lot and work hard. Every time he's given more food, he works more harder. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gave the example of a donkey with regards to those who carry the books, but then not really carrying it with knowledge and knowing the effect of it in one's actions. And the example of the dog is like the person of knowledge that is alam al-su, the evil person that has some information, not knowledge really, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the ayat and the signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he was taken away from it. And he وَأَخْرَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ, and he was so much attached to the earth, and he followed his desires. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the example of both the himar or the donkey and the example of the dog with regards to some individuals, some types of people on the face of earth. And some of the people, his nafs, his being is like sab'iyya. That means it's like the lion, like not the lion, but those who would go after its prey. The animal goes when it goes after its prey, where it gets angry, so angry, and its concern is to al-udwan, is to attack people. Like the same thing when the lion or the tiger, they go attack certain animals. So some people are like this, and to oppress people to the best of their ability. It's exactly like how these animals they do. And some of the people, his nafs is like the rats. He is fasiq by his nature. That's why the Prophet ﷺ called him fasiq, the faqr, or the rat or the mouse is called from the fawasiq, that it's permissible to kill them even in the haram. So he's always corrupting those who are surrounding him. Right? So as if he would say, Subhana man khalaqahu al-fasad. The people around him would say, Subhan, glory be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that created that creature to just spread corruption. And some of the people, their nafs is like the nafus of the things that carry poison in it, like the snakes and the like of the snakes and so on. And this is the type where it harms others, and they harm others with their eyes, for example, like the evil eye ones, the ones that envy others, those who have evil eye, and they would be the mean for the person to enter his grave. Meaning, this can be one of the means of death even. And it is not the eye itself that does this, but it's the evil nafs, it's the evil being that they have, that it has this physical effect by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's like a snake when it bites a person. And of course, we are being told how to protect ourselves from these evil things by the ruqya, and by not missing whatsoever the afkar in the morning and in the evening, reciting Surah Al-Baqarah in the homes, and making sure that the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is part of our life in such a way. So he talked about these types of people. And ulama even talked about if someone with his evil eyes caused someone to die, for example. Would that be person then subjected to some rulings of punishment in this life? Does the ruler or the person of authority or the government would assign punishment for these types of people? So this is something that the ulama even talked about. That these types of people, if they're known, of course, things has to be done with clear evidences, not with just expectations, of course. Then the harm is to be avoided, of course. But this is not the place for this to be discussed. Also, again, so it's a subject that it's part of reflecting upon the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that some human beings, they tend to be like some of these animals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. So he keeps on talking about these types of examples. Some people like the Tawus, I forgot the name of the Tawus in English. The one that and see the transition of Haman. Al-Tawus is the peacock. The peacock, how he walks with pride and so much, look like as if he is adorning himself, beautifying himself. But in reality, there's not much really beyond that. And that sometimes people are like acting like this. And some people are like wolves, and some people are like, different animals. All of that is with regards to what these animals, their main characteristics is upon. So the issue of al-hayawaniya, or the animalistic situation here. A second one is the mashhad, or the situation where people witness the what comes with necessity as being a human being, what comes by necessity as being a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that the philosophers talked about and things like this, but and it's that the human beings they are made of physical body and the nafs and things like this. And the effect of these nafs of the human being, that nobody can push it away from it. That most of the people, they don't have a thing within their own selves to push them away from being evil or being good. So, and this is, has nothing to do with, it's best when a person refers to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet in these matters. That some things we have a choice in, some things we don't have a choice in. And the things that we don't have a choice in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make the person responsible for it. Some of the people, which is also a sign of the lack of their even intellect and reason, they think that they are forced to do the actions that they do. And that's something that happens without their power, without their will, basically. They witness that they are just being, the effect of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on them. And we talked about that before, that there's no excuse for a person to rely upon the qadr of Allah when it comes to being in a state of sin, or to continue to be in a state of sin. This is only to be referred to if it's something happened in the past and the person repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's it's more really foolish to even talk about these types of people, or to explain to them things, because it doesn't make sense. It's just people following their desires, because when it comes to their own benefit and physical affairs, they don't rely upon the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same thing with those who deny the qadr of Allah, and how they initiate their actions, and guidance is in their hands or against them. And they deny the qadr of Allah, which is another evil thing, of course. And these people are so much arrogant. One of the ways also that, the people of steadfastness, the people of, or those who have wisdom, right? And they are basically, they look into the wisdom of Allah when it's already decreed upon a person that he committed something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates and dislikes, which basically sins. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, He could have protected that person from that sin. And this is all by the Mashiach, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the perfect wisdom. So looking into the wisdom of the sins after repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So there's so much ayat and signs from Allah and amazing things to show the power of Allah when it comes to sins being existing on the face of earth. Of course, nobody is not to prove, is not to approve sins, is not to praise sins, but to talk about it from the perspective of that this is a fact. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decree, even at the times of fitan that we live in, when sins becomes apparent and very, done openly, and even sins that against the pure nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human beings with, of course this is evil and nobody would see any benefit in this. But from the perspective that this is the qadr of Allah that is already established on the face of earth, there is great benefits as a result of that. Great benefits. One of the greatest benefits of that is for the souls of the believers, those who are steadfast in the midst of all of these fitan, for them to be purified and for them to be elevated on their patient, and they are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, facing all these types of trials and benefits. And the mudafa'a, the struggle that they have with regards to these different types of sins, especially when the sins are not hidden but rather publicly done. You know, how the believers then are they? And they would say, even it's when people see these types of things, it makes them witness clearly that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth. So anything that happens on the face of earth, the believers, they see the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, for example, the drowning of the people of Nuh. And this was a great sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how many lessons that people learned from the sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that came as a result of the sins of the people. And the same thing with Fir'aun and his people. If it wasn't for their sins and their disbelief, these amazing ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for it to happen, it would have not been there. Like what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aided Musa alayhi salam with the miraculous things and splitting the sea and so on. It is not again to praise the kufr and disbelief, but it shows from the perspective of the fact that it's already been decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for some great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be shown. The same thing when Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire. You know, this is the action of an evil person, but the miraculous things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed happened as a result of this. And the levels of the messengers of Allah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated their levels and gave them the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For what reason? Because of their patience when their people harmed them, when people showed enmity towards them, when they were patient conveying the truth still to the people, and they were harmed as a result of that, you know, which is, it's not a pleasant thing when you look at it from a physical perspective. But when you look at it from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's such a beautiful level of the messengers of Allah, beautiful levels of the Sahaba. That's why the Sabiqun, the foremost among the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were of a higher level of rewards, and that would never happen unless there were dhulm and disbelief was prevailing and apparent. And because of that, the believers were firm and steadfast upon the deen of Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated the level so much. So having said that, we need to really enjoy the fact that we live in times by the decree of Allah that this is what Allah chose for us, right? It is not depending on our wishful thinking that we would wish to live, for example, at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the decree of Allah, the qadr of Allah, that we are living in these times, that we don't have a choice, we don't have a say in it whatsoever. So when a person sees that, he sees that this is, he can look at it from two different ways. Either to see it as a miserable things and just be miserable, even if it's with regards to matters of deen, or if a person is wise to see the wisdom of Allah, he would see that as a great opportunity, a great opportunity to attain the highest level that would make the person the happiest person for an everlasting state, by being patient and obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by having the knowledge of how to face these types of evil that are widespread, with ilm, with knowledge, with patience, with being steadfast upon the deen of Allah, or by following the ways of the messengers of Allah, to revive the deen the way it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. In these types of times, this is such a great opportunity for each and every one of us to reach the highest levels. And all of that is as a result of the apparent state of the sins and things that are not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed these things, as far as the decree of Allah, the qadr of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would decree something that is so much disliked and so much hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's decreed for this great benefit. And that is for the believers to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have ithar of the obedience of Allah, to show the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, to show the seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is far more of a will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is needed more than the evil itself. Right? The goodness of the believers in these types of situations is far more beautiful than the fact that there are sins and oppression and things like this. People, they would see only the evil widespread and things like this. They see that they don't see, or many of them, they don't see how beautiful it is in the midst of all of this when people are steadfast upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why, again, we have a great opportunity and a great responsibility not to be compromising in our deen, not to just be proving the evil, but rather to be firm upon the deen of Allah and to seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to live our lives like the early generations of Islam. This is how a person elevates himself. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, but it's a way to witness many different situations as a result of the sins that makes the person firm upon a tawbah, repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to change. Okay, inshallah, barakallahu feekum. We'll stop here and we'll have the other class in a few minutes, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammad wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.